Yeah, so like rule number one's like no playbooks. Like rule number yeah, so in my playbook, it's like do not follow a playbook.
This week on Merchants of Change, we've got Steve Travaglini. Steve played football for the Assumption Greyhounds before starting his sales career in the staffing business. He quickly rose through the leadership ranks in the tech space at Datto and Onshape. Today, he is a chief sales officer at LinkSquares. Here he is, Steve Travaglini.
I'm JR Butler, co-founder and CEO of the Shift Group, and you're listening to Merchants of Change. This is a podcast about transferring the skills and behaviors we acquire as athletes and military veterans into becoming a professional salesperson. Each week, we'll introduce you to a top performer who will help us understand how they became professional merchants of change.
What's up, kid? Today on the show, we've got Steve Travaglini. Steve, how you doing?
JR, I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, man. I'm pumped to talk to you today, dude. We got you got a lot of buzz going on around your business and coming off of award season too. So really excited. A little bit of background, Steve, on the show. We started it to start capturing content for the audience that we serve. As you know, at Shift Group, we help former elite athletes and military veterans successfully transition into sales careers. And when we bring guests on, we try to find people that have a background in athletics or military service that have had success in sales. And the typical flow, we like to start kind of with the sports, talk about your own transition, and then just talk about kind of your thoughts and best practices around sales, especially for those early in their career. So that's kind of the flow that we'll go through. Does that work for you?
Yeah, it works for me, JR. Love it.
I love it. We share a common experience of spending our 4 years in college in the heart of the Commonwealth, Worcester, Massachusetts. Me for the Crusaders, you for the Greyhounds. So I want to kind of talk about just very broadly, like some of your favorite memories from your football career. What comes to mind?
Yeah, so the team comes to mind, the locker room, the wins, the celebrations, the winter workouts outside with the football team, bear crawling through the snow, all the good stuff, all the hard stuff. In retrospect, it's all great memories, and I miss it for sure.
You had talked about with our producer. You were talking a little bit about an injury from your junior season. What happened?
Yeah, that was that was one of those bad memories that turned good memories. I was going into my junior year. I was a starting outside linebacker, getting ready. Coming off of a injury-filled sophomore season, and had a great spring ball. I got the the nod as a starter. And that summer, I blew up my knee in a big way. I had a full reconstruction, LCL tear. And then I had to make a decision on whether or not I was going to, focus on academics, like so many do, when they're going to lose a season and kind of just have one left. And, the other option was to stay on with the team, essentially become an extension of the coaching staff, help out our defensive coordinator. I was up in the booth for all the games. Being able to, watch from that perspective and learn a lot more about the playbook. And it was in retrospect, an amazing opportunity. And it made me appreciate so much more when I returned from my senior season, with a fresh set of eyes and stuff like that. So that was a great memory now because, it really made me start to have to think in that moment. It's kind of jarring. It's like, well, what's going to happen once all of this kind of comes to an end? Because, hopefully I get my senior season, and I ended up having, a pretty good season. I got the starting spot back and all that good stuff. But it began, me thinking about life after football.
Yeah, I think, you don't really understand. It's almost like you don't understand mortality at that age a little bit. Like,
yeah,
mainly the mortality of your career. So that's a tough wake-up call, but I'm sure it sets you up a little differently than some of your teammates. And I don't think people quite realize like the legacy of Assumption football, right? Chip Kelly, um, coach there, and then I believe that one of the next great Power Five football coaches, Coach Chesney, who's now at Holy Cross, but
Yeah.
he's a rock star there. Was that a? It must have been changed your perspective a little bit, being essentially a extension of the coaching staff, eh?
No doubt. It was definitely an eye opener for me to be a part of a coaching staff, um, even if it was an honorable mention. I was never the best film guy or playbook guy, and it kind of forces that hand to get good at things you're not good at,
Yeah,
and it definitely made me a better player. And yeah, Assumptions had a good run. I was right before all of the championships at Assumption, so one of the foundational turning moments, like program turning. We had some good winning seasons, which was unlike Assumption for my era. And then insert the new coaching staff, and a bunch of NFL players come out of the program, and
yeah.
it's a pretty cool experience to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, I always say like the banners that hang on at universities, those aren't just for the team that's there now. It's for the teams that came ahead, and I'd be willing to bet that you guys put some banners up at Leitrim's, even if you didn't put them up on the field.
Yeah, no doubt. Our class had the most banners at Leitrim's out of anybody. I'd bet.
How do you think your teammates would describe you from your playing days?
Oh, definitely. I was one of the crazier, more intense, passionate football players on the team, without question. I mean, I was a linebacker, kind of went full Daniel Day-Lewis method acting into the role, right? When I was in high school, The Program was a
Oh,
great football movie, and Vladimir, or whatever his name was, I think was kind of like my inspiration for my collegiate playing style. But yeah. It's like it's no surprise. I think that people today would describe me as just like a very intense, passionate guy, right?
yeah.
And that's just the way that I live.
Yep. How you do anything is how you do everything. Hopefully you're not like in the parking lot, like smashing your head through windows before you come into work though. Like Vlad did.
No, no, it's a great scene. It's a great scene.
So you mentioned like your junior year, you get injured. It's like that kind of wake up call. Like I guess I'm not going to be able to play football forever. Um, was sales the first thing that came to your brain, or were you kind of thinking about other routes? Like I know when I was in college, I had always wanted to be a lawyer, and there was no like love of the law for me or anything like that. It was about like they have nice suits, have nice watches, and drive nice cars. Like
Right.
what was your thought process when it came to thinking about that transition?
Yeah. So I'm one of those rare people that always knew, like, if it wasn't sports or football, it'd probably be sales. And the reason for that, my mom and dad both in sales to a degree, right? Mother was in recruiting. My dad's a financial advisor, so there's like heavy, sales and prospecting principles that permeate into that profession, like they do many. But my dad's one of six boys, right? And all five of his brothers are in sales. So I grew up in a loud Italian family where a lot of the guys were in sales, and many of the women as well. So I was just always kind of around it, and I was always told since I was in elementary school I'd either be a great salesman or a great politician, um, one of the two. And I think as I learned more about myself, it'd be better for the world if I was a salesman. uh, so it's just one of those things that I always kind of had it as what I would do if it didn't work out.
Yeah, yeah. So where did you like? What was your first job like, and how'd you get it?
Yeah, so my first sales job was like really it was an internship. It was an unpaid internship at the time. Assumption, when probably still to this day. I'm not sure if they've changed their stance, but to get credit for your internship towards your degree, it needs to be unpaid. So I went to, the administration, office, and I went to the cork board and I pulled off a sales internship, sales intern needed, unpaid. And I said, okay, that sounds great. Um, it was at the Worcester Visitors and Conventions Bureau, which is defunct now, but it was a tourism outfit, 3 full-time employees in Worcester, Massachusetts.
That's a hard sell back then for those that don't know Worcester, by the way.
Yeah, you're trying to bring tourism and visitors to Worcester. Yeah, the year was like 2009, 2010, something like that. And yeah, it was a crazy job. I mean, there was no onboarding whatsoever. There was no enablement. There was no training. I was given a phone book, literally a phone book, for Worcester, the greater Worcester area, and a telephone. And I was cold calling like pizza shops and different people to advertise in this like little bureau that they would leave at like the train station in Worcester. And I had no idea what I was doing. Like the fundamental motivation of money, like in sales or any kind of commission, just wasn't there. And I was just struggling trying to figure this thing out. And I got really nervous because my backup, like the thing that I thought I was going to do, all of a sudden, I was convinced I sucked at it. And I, really did some soul searching before taking on a full-time gig, after graduation in recruitment, which more or less is sales.
Yeah. So when you graduated, your first sales role was in recruiting?
Yeah, yeah, it was, those were really like the SDR, like BDR days for me
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah.
It was a family-owned staffing firm in Central Mass, the Davis Companies,
Oh, I know
and
Davis Companies.
yeah, it was like one of those. It was like one of those gigs where you were on a 35K, 30K base salary. If you crush it, maybe you get up to 50, right? Something like that. And they start you off on the recruiting side, so you're basically just cold calling candidates all day long from resumes that are in databases for potential openings. And then once you prove yourself, do good enough, they'll ship you over to the account management side where you start to call up the businesses that are looking to hire people, and you start to work with in-house recruiters and stuff like that. So I had that whole crash course there, and it was a great learning experience, and it was definitely challenging, no doubt.
My first job was also based in Marlboro, by the way, and that's where I grew up, and I know that's where the Davis companies are. So
Yeah,
I'm,
that's
I'm
right.
I'm sure we cross paths at Sully's.
Yeah,
Oh, that's awesome! I didn't realize that.
yeah,
How
yeah,
did
yeah.
how did the transition over to tech happen for you, Steve?
Yeah, so yeah, I was about 4 years in. I did some cool stuff with the Davis companies. I opened an office out in Minnesota, believe it or not, Twin Cities,
Oh, wow.
and that was their first regional expansion since like the early 2000s, late 90s. Kind of took on like more of an entrepreneurial type of project. Um, and I was thinking a lot about like what I wanted to do in my career at that point. I had some success, not tons, and I had some skills, again, not tons. And I started to look around at some of my friends, what they were doing with their careers, how they were progressing. I just saw everybody in tech moving so fast,
Yeah.
right? Like they were moving up, they were making a lot of money, a lot more money than I was making at the time, and I just was hungry for a bit more, and I wanted to keep learning. And you know, to this day, I still say that selling staffing is like the hardest thing, the hardest
Yeah.
sale that I've had, right? Because like people are so unpredictable, and you could actually have a product that somebody wants to buy, aka like a offer goes out, and then your product, which is your candidate, says no, right? So God bless you, Jr. and what you guys are up to. It's a real hard business. It
It
really
is.
is, and there's a lot of variables, and there's like these. Anyways, so I won't bore you with that. You understand the business, but I was looking for something that would be easier to sell as well, like selling software, solve a problem with a great technology, something like that. Align those two things. Lord knows I had a lot of belief in my ability as a seller. And I was thinking, hey, tech is probably a good place for the future, for now. And ultimately worked with a recruiter and landed at a tech company, which was cool.
That's awesome. That's great. And
Yeah.
now that you're like, you're obviously a lot further along. Looking back, this is a very broad question, but I'd love to hear it. Like, what do you love about the fact that this is where you landed? Like, what do you love about sales as a profession, just like personally? Like, what's so great about it for our audience, so they can hear your perspective?
Yeah, I think you know, it's really challenging for a lot of athletes like myself when they're coming out of something that's such a huge part of their life, and then they need to find something that kind of operates in a similar way, right? To really scratch that itch and to fill that void. Because, like, honestly, for me coming out of football, there's a big void, right? I just had this thing that I was trying to replace. It was like the thing I always thought about, cared the most about. For sales, there's the team elements, there's the competitive elements, there's the meritocracy of, you know, work your butt off, be the absolute best that you can be. And if you're doing better, you're going to get the opportunity, you're going to make more money. There was just like this synergy and alignment with athletics that for me felt so familiar. If you slack off, if you're not super disciplined, if you're not in the zone, right, like you're going to feel that impact on your game at work. And, like, there's the feeling of letting your team down and different things like that. So all the things that kept me super motivated through high school, college, I found the parallel to them in sales. And that's what I think I love the most at the beginning. Now I can say that, like, everything I was sold about being in software sales at startups is 100% on the money, right? If you truly go all in and you give it everything that you have, you can find yourself within, a 10-year, span of time in a very unfamiliar place. I feel like I've had a career by the time I'm 35 that some people don't get the opportunity to, throughout their entire lives, and I think that's so unique to sales, specifically as a discipline, and also to tech and startups as well as an extension of where I'm doing my sales work. So all of those things, I think, is, it's a beautiful thing for me.
I agree. The piece about the meritocracy, like, I can't emphasize that enough. Like, it's like I've had the sign up, nobody cares, work harder. Because, like, I actually believe it in my bones. Like, there's not a lot of professions out there that are as black and white as sales, and athletes more than anybody understand, like, there's a winner and there's a loser. There's a scoreboard and there's a depth chart. And it's up to you exactly where you sit in all of that, and sales is just like that. So I'm glad you called that out. How do you?
Yeah, no doubt.
I have to imagine you probably still
Where's
get
mine?
calls. You still get calls from Greyhound graduates, and like, what are you asking them typically to make sure that, like, they understand that whether or not sales is a good fit for them from a career
J-
perspective.
JR, I don't get calls from Assumption graduates. I don't get cold outreach. I get nothing.
Oh,
Um, it's crazy to me, right? Like, I'd be happy to do it. I'd be happy to talk to people from the football team if they wanted to know. And it's like, the thing about school sometimes is, like, I don't think that they always do the best job at promoting, like, alternative paths, right, into places like the startup scene, which is why I think what you're doing is so great. I know you've done some work with Assumption and kind of educate them. But when I was there, it was all about, like, rider rent a car, truck rental, and Meditech, and, like, some of the larger, like, corporate, like, behemoths that were trying to, like, put their tendrils in to get FaceTime. And then I think a lot of the athletes take that at face value and they go, okay, this must be the path. And then maybe it's them who have the inboxes that are blowing up, but it's certainly not happening on my end at all. It's just kind of interesting.
it's not unique, by the way, dude. Like I think, and maybe it's like our industry's fault as a whole that we've done a bad job from a PR perspective. When I think sales in academia, sales is still like kind of a dirty word. Um,
Yeah.
but, like, I always try to explain to people, because a lot of especially the higher end kids that come into the program, they're like, I think I want to be a consultant. And I'm like, okay, what's the job of a consultant? And they'll say, well, you go into a company, you figure out, like, what they're doing today, where there's gaps, and then you show them a path where they can improve people, process, technology, all these decisions, and have better outcomes. And I'm like, okay, you just described a sales job, except at the beginning of that, you have to ask for their attention. And at the end of that, you have to ask for their money. So do you want to be a consultant who lives on a plane and doesn't get paid if you do what you just described really well, like more money? Or do you want to do what you just described and get paid according to how you perform in doing that job? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, no doubt. I totally agree with that. Yeah, it's one of those things. So to revisit the question though, like what would I say
Yeah.
to people that are looking? I would say, think about what it is that you're looking for, right? Are you the type of person that wants like a lot of structure and consistency? Do you visualize yourself as being somebody that wants to be at a place for, 10, 20 years and really like get into that type of comfortable rhythm? Yeah, over a longer period of time. There are a lot of options for that, a lot of great options. Or are you the type of person that wants to continuously be like learning new things, going really quick? And basically, like what I'm trying to suss out there is like, is this person someone that should really explore like the big company structured curriculum for onboarding, or is this a person that could potentially benefit from a crash course like right out of the gates into the startup world? They're both great options. I have a strong bias towards the startup universe because that was my experience, right? Just like a lot of the bigger company folks have a strong bias towards the big company. But I think that's a critical thing that college grads and people thinking about the workforce need to explore, like immediately, versus 6 months into Oracle realizing like this is the last place you wanted to be, or being at a startup where like there isn't like a really clean path and you're just kind of in like a real gritty mode and you're like, wait, I feel very uncomfortable with this uncertainty, and I was looking for something that was going to be more stable and more predictable. It's like I think we could do a better job at educating people on what the short and long term for both of those options can look like, to give people a better guiding nudge to explore conversations in one way or the other.
Yeah, it's hard for me. We have big customers and we have small customers, and like my career trajectory is very similar to yours. The biggest company I ever worked for was, it was like 20 people when I joined it, and it was like
Right.
650 when I left. But what I always say is like, listen, I was a chief revenue officer at 34. If I did exactly what I did in my career, had the same performance level, I would have been probably like a district manager at 34 instead
Yeah.
of a
Right.
CRO, which is very
Yeah,
different
no doubt.
roles.
Same. Yeah, same here, man.
I always actually I stole from you. You did a post one time about the difference between people that maintain versus people that build, and I ultimately like at its core, I think that's the biggest difference between a small company and a big company. And young people don't quite know where they fit in that box. But
Right.
I do believe it's better to see if you're a builder first than to see if you're a maintainer first, because you can get stuck in the comfort, right?
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. Maintainer, they might say like optimizer, right? But
Yeah.
it's but I totally agree, and that was my experience, right? I was sold the dream. I was excited by the dream of the builder, right? And that's all I know, to be fair. Which is
Yeah.
why I want to acknowledge that when I give that advice out, because
Right.
my way is not the only way. It's a damn good way. It's worked out well for me,
Yeah.
but it might not for them, right? So always
Yeah.
try and give them reasonable advice versus saying that you should do this because, and it's like, it's not necessarily true, because, attrition in sales is somewhat high. And I think there's been a lot of people that were the right people, right? We hired them for incredible character traits, and, we were going to train the rest. And it's like, then you kind of realize that despite their best wishes, your best wishes, they were the right person, but probably for the wrong place. Right.
Yeah.
And you just got to help them find that right step so they can be successful.
Yeah,
So
it's. I always use the bottle of water analogy. Like you buy it at Costco and it's 30 cents a bottle. You buy it at CVS and it's $1.25. You buy it at the airport and it's $9. Same water, same H2O. It's about the environment. And you got to find where you're $9, not 25 cents.
I love that. I love that. That's great. I'll use that one. That's awesome. I was like, where's he going with this? He's going to land the plane? Like, yeah.
What do you?
I was just in Las Vegas, and they were selling water at the Sphere. I went to the U2 show this past weekend with my wife,
Oh, sick.
and it was like $14. So find where your water's worth $14.
Oh, that place looks unbelievable, by the way.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was a really cool time.
That's awesome. So do you think like your career path has a lot, like where you've gotten to so quickly? I think it has a lot to do right company, right time. Obviously, I think both
Yeah,
of us would be, pretty arrogant to not say that didn't have a huge reason why we got to where we did when we
no
did.
doubt,
What
no
what
doubt.
else what else do you think contributed to it though for you?
Yeah, so I think it realistically is an alignment of working incredibly hard, right, and being incredibly disciplined, right? In the zone, if you will. You guys say locked in, right?
Dialed in, yeah.
Yeah, dialed in. That's it, right? It's like making that decision to be on kind of at all times is a thing for me that allowed me to maximize my opportunity, right? Like for athletes listening, you totally understand when you get a chance, right? You might be young on the team, or maybe you've been riding the pine behind someone great for several years, and they have an injury, right? Like, or something happens where someone's not able to play, and you get your chance finally, right? You have to make the most of that chance, and I think that I definitely did. I was like focused on everything. I cared so much about what my peers on my team thought about me, what my leadership team thought about me, what my executives thought about me. I wanted every interaction to be one that would left people with a positive impression, that they were impressed that I was focused, that I was intense, that I was someone that was results oriented, right? And I was very mindful of that as I was coming up. And then it's not just about the optics; it's about doing like the hard work behind the scenes that nobody appreciates, right? That puts you in a position to make a great impression, whether you're closing a big deal or you really know your stuff, and you can kind of nail a conversational point with somebody higher up and stuff like that. So like, I think it's really just like you said, it's luck is a big piece of it,
Yeah.
right? And then it's making the most of your opportunities. But one thing I forgot to layer in there is like, it's like the airport thing you're just talking about. Like, I was trying to pick something that I thought was a good fit for me, right? And it wasn't just the stage of the company; it was also the person that I was joining. And like, it felt like it just felt chemical, right? It felt like there was like this attraction to what this person was about. And it was also somebody that like I looked at and went like, dang, like they did the thing that I want to do, right? And looking at that, when they talk and they're telling you from their perspective what it's going to take and how they did it and all this type of stuff, it's like I just believed, right? And I think having that sense of belief in the person that you're going to work for, and then having it reciprocated back, is so important. It's critical. And I was very fortunate. Chris Essler was his name. Rob Flynn as well. I had two leaders. I had Chris Essler and I had Rob Flynn, where it's like we just all hit it off on every possible level, and it worked out, right?
Yeah.
It just worked out.
Yeah. I know Chris well. His brother Scott worked for me
Yeah.
at Turbo. They're an unbelievable family. Um, and what you're talking about, by the way, Steve, when a kid comes through our program, typically they're going to get a couple different offers. This actually just happened with somebody that is now working at LinkSquares, and apparently was the first one in his class to get a meeting, and he had this other offer. And I asked him one question. I'm like, who do you admire more? Which leader do you admire more? And that's who you should go work for. I don't care. Don't talk to me about 5K difference in comp. Don't
Right.
talk to me about in office or that. None of that shit matters right now. You need to pick the leader that you admire the most, that you feel like you can learn the most from, and that's where you should go. Whether that's one of our companies or somebody outside of our network, that's who you should pick 100% of the time. So I'm glad you emphasize that, because I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, no doubt. Like, what do they believe in, right? I mean, all of it has to kind of come together. I couldn't agree more with that advice. That's like, honestly, some of the best advice you can give to somebody, because they're smart, right? Like, they're weighing the positives, the negatives, and they know the rest of it on paper. It all matters too.
Yeah.
right? But to have some clarity to kind of cut through it when you
Yep.
look 10 years into the future, you'll regret taking the 5K with the leader you don't believe in versus just going in with the person that your gut's telling you, like, it's just this person. And quite frankly, that's great when it works against me too, right?
Yes.
Because then that person's finding the right place for them, and that matters the most. And it's avoiding that connection where I might be super excited about somebody, but it's quite not right on the other end. It's gotta line up. And candidates owe it to themselves to do that work.
Totally. Because no matter which one you choose, this shit's going to be hard. So you better do it
Yeah,
with people that you like and that you connect
yeah,
with.
no doubt. No doubt.
100%. Um, this is a kind of a broad question, Steve, but like I'd love to know the playbook, the sales playbook that you're going to write someday. What are like some of the core pillars of like what great salespeople do?
Yeah, so like rule number one's like no playbooks. Like rule number Yeah, so in my playbook, it's like do not follow a playbook. Just care about doing what works, and do not care about being right, right? Because often you'll be wrong in building one of these things. So that would be the first thing. I would just be weary of anyone who like praises like a sales methodology as like the way forward, and we're going to build it like this, and structure like this, and qualify like this, and this acronym is going to be the thing that saves you. And it's like everyone's just trying to sell you something. And
Yep.
there's a lot to be learned. And I think that everybody should be a student of the game. So in my book, I would say do that, and then apply what you're learning from all of these various different disciplines and methodologies, and think about your unique situation as a riddle. That's probably going to change every 6 months because, of course, my playbook would be focused on the building, side of the world. So you got to constantly be changing. Self disruption is like the name of the game. So that's where that motto of mine, don't care about being right, do what works, kind of holds me accountable. And I've done a whole lot of that this year, JR, a whole lot of that. So I think a lot of people who are succeeding in 2023 can agree. And those that are, not, it's like, well, what are you doing to fix it, right? It better not be the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two, it's like hire well, and hire with integrity, right? There's three things that I always use to help guide my basis for interviewing and making decisions. Number one, I want people that are energy givers. To your point, the job's going to be hard as heck, as is. And if you have a room that's built on folks who are naturally like optimistic, positive, solutions oriented, going to lift each other up, that creates its own momentum because everyone's going to take their turn having the bad day. And if you're around a group of people that can lift up, that goes a long way. The second, I look for people that are self-driven. I find that like when you hire people who have a lot of potential, but they don't have a proven track record of, being gritty or a grinder or working through adversity, you're going to end up pulling those people a lot further than they're comfortable being pulled. And that's where things, burnout and stuff like that happens. I want people that want to be more successful than I want them to be. And I want them to be pretty damn successful. Right. And then the last thing I look for is, trying to evaluate open and honestly for like the skill set. And like there is one, like you can teach a lot of sales, but there is definitely elements of natural ability that I look for in folks that help it all kind of click at the highest level. Every sale's different. So, I'm always looking for the folks that could potentially have that natural fit for mine. So I think it's really those two things is like what I would focus on. And I'd probably have like a third chapter. If there's three sections, like first would be no playbooks. Second would be hiring well and consistently with integrity. And then number three, what was number three? I had it. It was on the tip of my tongue.
Cut your
It'll come to
losses.
me.
Cut your losses. Or
Oh no, number three. Like a manager's guide to like human psychology, and because so much of the job, as you continue to go through sales, as you elevate, as you go deeper into IC paths, or as you get into leadership, so much of the nuance of being okay or good or great at the job lies in your ability to communicate with human beings, to connect with them, to motivate them, And there's just so much to it that I don't think is focused on enough when everyone's focused on like, what's your sales methodology? It's like, okay. But anyway, yeah, that would be number three.
It's so true, and it's we're in a little bit of an echo chamber as salespeople with LinkedIn. I always tell people like this is just salespeople and marketing people talking to other salespeople and other marketing people, and
Yeah.
you have these like strong opinions about like this is working and this is dead and this
Yeah.
is how you should do this, and it's like when somebody asks me like JR, what do you think works? My answer is everything. Like you have to try
Yeah.
everything and you have to see what's working at that moment in time for your specific clients that you're trying to to sell to, and it's going to change over time. So I love
Yeah.
the no playbook. That sounds like a good title right there potentially.
Yeah. Well, hold on. Before we get off that, like, I'll build on that. So
Okay.
I've over the years have really figured out how to use LinkedIn as a tool for
Yeah.
recruiting,
Yes.
for building awareness about our company. And most of the time when I'm posting on there, it's about that, right? But I am sometimes opinionated to the point where people inside of my four walls at LinkSquares are like, do you really believe that? And I'm like, well, like right now we're kind of in office 5 days a week. So like I have to put that message out there because the people that resonate with that message that come to LinkSquares like need to have an in-office experience when we're in office. We're hybrid now, and I'm
Yeah.
all about hybrid, right?
Yeah.
So like I'll put the hybrid out there. People are like, I thought you said it was all about in office. And I was like, well, at the time, that's what works. Like, I don't care about being right on this thing. This is what I'm advertising right now to the candidates out there. And there was a point where, for us, being a full cycle team, meaning no SDRs, full cycle was the name of the game. Like, it was a time where the data was showing we were more efficient when we were full cycle. The SDRs are actually slowing us down versus helping. That's gone full 180 in the other direction. Now we have we're building a world-class SDR organization for folks that are listening to this. If you're in the Boston area, we are in office 3 days a week. JR and team can help represent you. We are hiring a whole bunch of SDRs. Why? Because the data right now is telling us that's actually way more efficient than this thing that worked during COVID, where full cycle was easier. Pre-COVID, we had SDRs. So it's like kind of always ebbing and flowing. And I totally agree with you. Like half of the stuff on LinkedIn is just steam for views and clicks. And the people that know how to get it know that you have to be even more and more opinionated about all that stuff. So I wouldn't put too much weight into any of it.
No. And I mean, I think somebody who lands at a great organization like LinkSquares is surrounded by people that are going to develop them. I think the problem is not all organizations are created equally. So you've got a big chunk of the sales population that is relying on these people on LinkedIn to get advice and to get training. And to your point, those people are selling you something. So just be very, very cognizant of that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And I'm sure some of it's good, right? And like that's the thing. Like it's not all bad either. There's
No.
stuff to be learned, but there are no gurus. There's no replacement for just getting into a company and working your butt off and figuring it out for yourself. And I plugged into a whole bunch of it, like John Barros and stuff. Like earlier in my career, I was like trying to get everything I could because I was trying to get ahead. I would swipe my credit card, like whatever, if I can get an edge. I was just trying to find ways to figure out the things that I hadn't learned yet. And I think sometimes, especially for reps that aren't totally brand new, but there are people that have been in a job for 6 or 12 months. They're hearing like one set of voices, and then like they realize just how hard everything is, and that despite maybe the strength of their leadership team and the coaching and the enablement, it's still really hard. So people start to look elsewhere, like who's got the easy button, like who's got the thing, and it's like don't go looking to those influencers for that. Right, like maybe they do have a course, but that could really help you and unlock a little bit more performance.
Yeah.
But like, it's just going to be harder and
Yeah.
harder as you go, like deeper into the game. It just gets harder in different ways, easier in others. But I totally agree with you, JR. And I love your tongue-in-cheek trolling of people. Sometimes it's great.
Well,
It's like it's just fun stuff because like there's also a culture of just like praising everybody for everything, no matter what, all the time. And it's like, we're all human beings and not everybody should be idolized online. It's like kind of cuckoo.
yeah. My friends call me the LinkedIn Batman. So like they'll send me a post and it's like the light is up above the city, like JR, we need you here. So I'll jump in and fortunately nobody will fire me. So I can say stuff that I wouldn't have said 2 years ago when I
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
CRO.
no
You know what I
doubt.
mean?
Yeah, no doubt. I do know what you mean. I do. I do. That's a
Uh,
riot.
I
I'm a
love
big
it.
fan. I'm a big
I love
fan.
it. By the way, I think like the nugget there for everybody listening is approach that stuff with the context of what Steve said his first chapter of his playbook is, which is do what works, right? So, I've had experiences where I went from running same company, same product, same title at a customer, and I went from commercial to enterprise. And guess what? A lot of the stuff I was doing in commercial didn't apply to enterprise. The deals were bigger, there were more people involved, it took longer time. So you have to be ready to pivot at all times when you're a salesperson and you're moving up and changing the direction of your career. Just approach it with like a beginner's mindset and figure out what works for that specific time period and that specific role. I think that's the
Totally.
nugget that I want everyone to take away from that.
Totally. Totally.
I love it.
I'm doing it right now. Like it's active, right? The
Yeah.
same stuff that made me successful, like in those early SDR days versus like now it's like the trial and error. Like you have to be open to switching things up and you have to, you have to be bold about, making pivots when things aren't working. Right.
Yep. Yep.
So
And the good thing about sales is you're going to have a lot of at bats to try different stances.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
no doubt. No doubt. Yeah, absolutely.
Steve, this has been awesome, man. We finish off every show with the same two questions. So the first one we like to ask every guest, like if you could name a skill that's really made a difference for you in your career, that's made you elite and led to where you are today, what would that one skill be for you?
I think for me, it was, really being comfortable with who I am and what my natural skills are, and really leaning into those things that I was already spiky at. Right, like I'm a passionate, intense guy. Right, playing into those strengths, I think was my superpower. Right, like when it comes to being, dialed in and talking about, that period of my life where it was just all about making sure that every impression was nails. Like the discipline that I had from sports, combined with like the passion and intensity that I brought to that, bringing that to sales and like still being a good teammate, right? Which is a big piece of it. I think it's some of the magic sauce in
Yeah.
addition to like choosing the company well and choosing your leader well, right?
Yeah.
Making the most of that opportunity.
Yeah.
So for me, I think just being a passionate, kind of crazy, intense guy,
Yeah.
and being very disciplined about how I approach it, because it
Yeah.
matters a lot, right? It just matters so much, and I think that's the thing too. It's like it's okay that like your job matters to you, right? That's like a thing that like it's like so like in vogue to like it be like a thing that like, oh no, it's like toxic or not cool to like be all in on your career and like going. It's like, well, if you were on the New England Patriots, how would you be expected? Maybe a better reference for prior years, right? If you were on an elite sports team. Sorry, Bill Belichick, if you're listening. It doesn't really apply this season, but like everybody just assumes like, well, yeah, of course, that's if you're a professional athlete. But like I'm in sales, like it shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be like all consuming and a thing that like you go all in on. And it's like, what are you talking about? What kind of life is that? Like I just wish that more people would realize that you can have like true purpose and meaning in something like a sales career. No different than people that we idolize like on TV, right? Like
Yeah.
the T Swifts and the Travis Kelce's. It's like if you're not like the star of your movie and treating like Monday to Friday and the weekends and everything like as a scene that you're building up towards something special, like it's not going to be worth watching someday. And I think I always really wanted to be somebody, right? Similar to you, like why'd you want to be a lawyer? Why'd I want to be in sales? Well, I could be somebody I think pretty quickly and fast is like what I believed, and I thought I had a good work ethic and skill set for it. So that's kind of how it shook out. And you brought up award season earlier. It's like I got the CRO of the Year award, and like the BDR in me is like, what is this? right? It's kind of crazy to like reflect on it, right?
Yeah.
You know, beating out some of the influencer types too, right? Like along the way, and
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I guess this is what you get after you put your nose, put your head down, put your nose to the grindstone, and work your butt off for like 12 years straight.
Yep.
You get some acknowledgments and all that good stuff, but like, don't forget also when you come up in the game where you come from.
Yeah.
You have a very important audience, JR. So I wanted to make sure I left some more tidbits out there that maybe I haven't dropped on a podcast before. So hope this is
There,
helpful for the folks that are listening in.
it's amazing. And there is no such thing as an overnight success. It's like you're not seeing that 12 years prior to that, to you
Yeah.
walking up on that stage. And by the way, like your point about it not being cool to love your job and to like be passionate and like dedicated to it. The alternative to that, and I don't care what you do, people spend a third of their life working. So if you're telling me that that third of your life is something that you don't really give a crap about and you're just there to check boxes and go through the motions, like that's not a great alternative choice, man, to like saying, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go all into it and I'm going to be the best that I can be, whatever it is. If you're a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant,
Yep.
like why not
Amen.
make the most out of
Amen.
it, you know?
Amen. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, man. I hope that people take that away. Like that's the trait, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
care enough where you're willing to, and find the place where you care enough about what you're doing that you don't waste that third of your life just going through the motions. Be a damn shame.
Absolutely. Last question, Steve. You talked about, we use dial it in a lot. And when we talk about it, we talk about people that are performing at the highest level. It's easy to talk about, Tom Brady's dialed in, but I think the best compliment you can give a salesperson is calling them dialed in. What does being dialed in mean to you as for salespeople?
I think everything that we've said.
I was going to say,
You know, yeah, it's like, what's been said, what more could be said about it? It's, being dialed in is being disciplined. Being dialed in is being excited, right? Like being dialed in is being optimistic. Being dialed in is learning, right? Being dialed in is always searching for what works and not caring about being right. People like that are unstoppable.
unstoppable. So good, Steve. This is hashtag required listening officially, man. Thank you so much for
I appreciate you.
giving us time out of your busy schedule, man. You guys are doing really special things over at LinkSquares. And like you said, if you're in the Boston area or willing to move there, give it a look. It's the best. It's my favorite company we work with. So Steve, thank you so much.
I officially have 10 openings right now for December and January. So if you're listening, come find me. Shoot me a DM. Let's chat.
I love it. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
All right. See you guys.
This wraps up this episode of Merchants of Change. If you enjoyed this episode, the most meaningful way to say thanks is to submit a review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're interested in working with us, please come find us at www.shift